Hey everyone, welcome back to new video, and in this video we're gonna learn how to use Firebase Firestore Pagination in our FireNote application. So in our previous parts we saw how to use Firebase database, Firebase storage and Firebase authentication. Now in this particular video we'll deal with Firebase Firestore Pagination. So to do that I'm gonna use my shared note feature. So in this shared note feature we're gonna list all of the notes which user might want to share across all of the peer users. So this is our shared note module, and we're gonna begin our journey with domain layer. So open your domain, make sure to view these folders in project mode. Now just open your shared notes domain, and in this source, first thing first, you need to delete this my class. So let me just remove it, and after that I'm gonna create here few packages. So first package which actually holds the data class, or you can say shared node data class. Next we have one package for our repository, and we have one use case. And in this repository I'm gonna create an interface, and the interface name is shared node repository, and within this we have one function, and the function name is suspend function get shared nodes. A return type of this function is list of type shared node. So let's create this shared node model. Right click, just create a data class, and the data class name is shared node. Now in this shared node I'm gonna use all of the parameter which we have in our node. Now simply just copy this whole data class, come back to your shared node, paste in here, change the name from node to shared node, and I'm gonna use this shared node as a domain model to our shared node feature. Now come back to your shared node repository and simply import it. Okay, so we are done with our domain model. Now it is a good time to begin our journey with data layer of our shared nodes. So just open it. First thing first, open your build.gtl.kts, and we need to add few plugins as you already remember. So first plugin is for our Dagger, and next plugin is for our Firebase. So Lips plugin google.services. So in order to process our Kotlin annotation processor for Dagger Hilt, we'll use here Kotlin KAPT, Kotlin annotation processing tool. Scroll down, and in this dependencies section I'm gonna use my dependency for Dagger Hilt. So Lips Dagger Hilt, then we have Kotlin annotation processor tool, use here KAPT. As we know, we're gonna use here Firebase Firestore, so we need to also add dependency. So implementation lips Firebase Firestore.ktx, and also its platform. So implementation lips Firebase BOM. So this is a platform, we're gonna use this particular dependency within our platform. Alright, so we need to connect this particular data module with our domain. So we'll use here implementation project, and in this we'll mention the feature name. So feature name is shared nodes, this is my feature, and next we have to mention the layer which is domain. Okay, sync your project. So now we're gonna write implementation of our shared node repository in our data layer. So here in the data I'm gonna create a package, and the package name is repository, and in this repository I'm gonna create a class, and the class name is shared node repo implementation. Simply use your shared node repository, and in this override your method which is get shared node. I'm gonna inject my Firebase Firestore, and also I want to create a variable which points toward my nodes collection. So for that I'm gonna use here private variable naming node collection, initialize this thing with our Firebase Firestore dot collection, and simply mention our nodes collection. Okay, let me make some space for you. Here you can see this is my collection path. Okay, so now we have a reference to our nodes collection. Alright, so now it's time to write the pagination logic. So in order to write pagination logic, we'll require few more variables. So first variable is document snapshot. Type of this thing is document snapshot and initialize this thing with null. Next we have is loading. Type is boolean, initial value is false. Next we have end of pagination. Type of this thing is boolean, initial value is false. And one more variable which actually holds the information about my page size, which is 3 by default. If you want to play with it, you can do it very easily. Okay, so now it's time to write its implementation. So first we'll check is loading or end of pagination is true. We're gonna simply return my empty list. Otherwise we simply update our is loading to true, and just after that we're gonna execute a query. Basically not execute, write a query. So we have node collection and we are interested only in the shared node. So if shared is true, simply grab that kind of node to me. After that we're gonna introduce here page size with the help of limit. So mention your page size and convert your page size into long. Okay, so now we have our query. It is not executed yet, we only created query. Next we're gonna check our document snapshot. So this document snapshot contains the document information of your previous page last item. So if it is not null, we're gonna execute the next execution after this particular document snapshot. This is what I'm gonna achieve using this document snapshot. Okay, so I'm gonna use query start at and simply mention your snapshot, or instead of using here start at, use here start after this document. Okay, so now it's time to perform query. So I'm gonna create here a variable naming query snapshot, use my query get await. So if you check its return type, or you can say type, we have query snapshot. Next we're gonna convert this query snapshot into shared node. So to do that we're gonna use my query snapshot two objects and mention the type, which is shared node class.java. Okay, so now we have mutable list of shared node. I want to wrap this thing in try catch because I want to convert is loading value to false. It doesn't matter whether it throws any exception or not. So to do that I'm gonna use here try finally. Okay, and in this try I'm gonna put all of these things. Okay, so now we have nodes. If our query snapshot is empty not, if it is not empty, on that case I'm gonna simply update my document snapshot with the query snapshot last documentation. So document snapshot will use our query snapshot. In this we gonna receive all of the documents and pull the last one in order to update our document snapshot. If it is empty, that means we are standing at the end of it. Okay, and lastly I'm gonna use my is loading and just reset it to false. It's time to return my nodes. So simply use here return nodes, and that's it. So this will perform pagination for you. As you can see, first we'll check loading and end of pagination. If it is true, we simply return empty list. Otherwise we simply update our is loading value to true. After that we'll make a query, and just after this we'll check if my document snapshot is not null, then I want to execute my query after this particular document. So here we actually perform that, and when we receive information we'll simply convert those information in a form of shared node. And next we'll check if my query snapshot is not empty, update my document snapshot. Otherwise we'll say that we are at the end of our pagination, and we simply return that incoming nodes from this query. And finally we'll reset is loading to false. So this is the implementation for my get shared nodes. Now it's time to provide it. So to do that, here in data I'm gonna create a package name is ti, and in this ti I'm gonna create an object, and the object name is shared nodes data module. So first we'll use here install in singleton component, Next we'll mention this as a module. Now in this we're gonna use here provide function provide shared note repository, and the requirement of this thing is Firebase Firestore. Return type of this thing is shared note repository. Just create an instance of our shared note repo impl and pass your Firebase Firestore. That's it. Now go back to your domain layer, and in this domain layer let's build a use case. So it's a Kotlin class and get Paginated shared note use case. So it's a class, and in this class simply inject your shared note repository, import it. In this we'll use operator function invoke, use your shared note repository, get shared note, make sure it's a suspend function, so use suspend modifier. Okay, now it's time to provide this information. So to do that, go to your application module, open source main Java. Here we have ti. Just create one more object for shared note feature. So shared note domain module, it's an object. Again we want to do the same thing what we did. So first we will use here install in singleton component. Make sure to import these two, and after that use here module. In this we'll have to create a function which will provide paginated shared note use case, and the requirement of this thing is shared note repository. Return get shared note use case, pass your shared note repository, make sure to import this shared note repository. Alright, so this will do the injection of use case in our view model. Okay, so we are pretty much done with data and domain layer. Now it's time to jump into our UI layer. So in our UI layer, first we're gonna create our view model. So here in the UI, first I'm gonna create a class, and the class name is shared note view model. This will eventually extend view model, and in this we're gonna inject our use case get shared. I think connection is not established yet, so let's do that. Go to your build.gradle.kts, and also we need to add dependency. So I'm gonna create here an activity, empty activity, in order to add all of the dependency. Now I'm gonna delete everything. Go to your build.gradle.kts. Now we have all the things that we want. Okay, I'm using here Lips plugin for Dagger. I'm gonna use here Kotlin annotation processor, so Kotlin KAPT. Scroll down at the bottom. I'm gonna use my Lips Dagger hilt, and also it's Kotlin annotation processor. Use here KAPT. Okay, sync your project, and now it's time to establish connection. So I'm using here implementation project. So feature name is shared-note, and we are interested in our domain layer. So simply use domain, sync your project. Here you can see shared notes. Try again. Okay, everything is working. Now scroll down in our UI layer, shared note view model. We will inject get paginated shared note use case, and here we'll use hilt view model. In order to use constructor injection, I'm using inject constructor. Make sure to import this inject. Alright, so now here we want to create a function get paginated notes. We'll use view model scope, launch a new coroutine, and now it's time to use our use case. So wall will receive here shared notes with the help of our use case. Okay, so it will provide all of my shared notes. Now it's time to update our UI state, but here instead of creating UI state, I'm going to create a private variable naming shared node, which reflects the mutable state flow of type shared node. So mutable state flow, and the type of this thing is list of shared node, not only shared node. List of shared node. Import this shared node, and corresponding to this will have an initial value of this thing is empty list. Now as soon as we'll get the information, we can simply add that information to our shared nodes. So shared node update it plus shared nodes, this shared node. Okay, and that's it. Now we will trigger this particular function when we want to fetch the next page information. So we will trigger this particular function from our composables. So let's build our composable. So now we're gonna write our user interface. So for that, in this UI, I'm gonna create a file, and the file name is shared nodes screen. This is a file, and in this file, I'm gonna create my composable, and the composable name is shared nodes screen. And just below to this composable, I'm gonna create one more composable, shared node screen content user interface. So first we have here scaffold, and in this scaffold I'm gonna pass my incoming modifier with fill max size. Now in this I'm gonna use top bar, which has top application bar. In place of title, I'm gonna use here shared nodes. This is an experimental material API, so make sure to annotate your composable with experimental material 3 API. So we have here navigation icon. I'm gonna use here icon that has image vector as a parameter. Icons default arrow back. Content description is null, and I'm gonna use here modifier just to capture the clickable event. So modifier clickable, we'll use this clickable later. Alright, so this is my top app bar, and in this we're gonna receive inner padding. So in my scaffold, I'm gonna use LazyColumn, and in this LazyColumn we're gonna render all of my list item. So to do that, we require that list. So we have here list of shared node. Now I'm gonna use this particular list in my LazyColumn. So in this LazyColumn, first I'm gonna pass modifier padding, use your inner padding, fill max size. Now within this trailing lambda, I'm gonna use here items. First we're gonna pass the count, so list dot size. Next we need to pass the key. So this key is coming from list dot get, and we'll get index in this particular lambda, and we're gonna use key as ID of our node. Next we have here content type, and we're gonna use the same approach, list dot get, mention my index and grep the ID. Now within this trailing lambda of items, we are retrieving the index. Okay, so now we're gonna create here a card, and we will use here modifier fill max width, and also I want to introduce here padding. So horizontally I'm gonna use here 12 dp, and vertically I'm gonna use here 8 dp. So this is my, as you can say, a base component, and within this base component or base composable, I'm gonna write all of the things. I'm gonna use within this a column, modifier fill max width. Within this I'm gonna use a row. So this row again has modifier fill max size, fill max width not size, and its vertical alignment is on the center. Now in this I'm gonna create a box. I'm using here modifier, and in this modifier I'm gonna give its size 8 dp, and its content alignment is on the center. So alignment, make sure it's in center. Now within this I'm gonna use text, and at the top of my column I'm gonna create a variable, and the variable name is item. List.get simply mention your index. So now we have information of particular item. So it's time to use it. So we'll use here item. This item has a lot of information like title, share, content, email, and we want to use here email, its first character, and I want to simply use its uppercase. So this box will eventually contains the first letter of your email. One more thing, I want to use here shape. So in order to use shape, we'll use here background, and the color of background is black. Import this color. Next we need to pass the shape, so I'm gonna use here circle shape, and at the end I'm gonna use here clip, just to clip all of the unnecessary thing of this box. Just after this I'm gonna use here spacer width of 8 dp, and also I'm gonna mention the email. So just use item dot its email, and I'm gonna use here style, which is coming from our material theme typography, and I'm gonna use here title small, which looks cool to me. Okay, so that's it for my row on the top. Now just below to it I'm gonna use here coil image loading library to load my image. So to do that, first thing first, we need dependency corresponding to that image loading library. So go to your build.gradle.kts, scroll down, and at the end simply use implementation libs. We have coil.compose, sync your project, come back to share notice screen. Okay, syncing is done. So we have here subcompose async image, and in this first we gonna mention our image URL. So this image URL is coming from the item. So item dot image URL, and in this we have loading lambda, and I'm using here box having modifier fill max width, and its height is 200 dp, and its content alignment is on the center. Now within this I'm using circular progress indicator. Okay, so next we need to pass content description, which is null. So this is for the loading case. Now we have error case too. So in the error case, again I'm gonna use the same box with circular progress indicator, but instead of using here circular progress indicator, I'm gonna use here text, and this text has information about my email. So email, grep its first character, and I wanna use here uppercase, and that's it. Also I want to introduce here style, which is coming from our material theme dot typography dot title. This time I'm gonna use here title large. Okay, so this is for the error case. Now I'm gonna introduce modifier to my subcompose async image. So use here modifier fill max width, and we're gonna use here height of 200 dp. That's it, we are done with our image. Now it's time to use spacer just below to this. Introduce here modifier height is 12 dp. Just below to it I'm gonna use here text item. I'm gonna show my title. Use the style material theme typography title large. Again I'm gonna use here spacer with modifier height of this thing is 8 dp. Just below to it I'm gonna show all of the content that user mentioned in their note, and this time I'm gonna left this style. Okay, so we are pretty much done with our card. I hope this UI looks good, but if anything goes wrong we will fix it later. Okay, so now it's time to trigger our get paginated nodes. So to do that we need to create one state, or you can say one variable that holds the information about my LazyColumn state. So I'm gonna call this lazy list state. Initialize this thing with remember lazy list state, and simply use this thing in my LazyColumn. So here we're gonna pass our state. Okay, now scroll down. At the bottom of our LazyColumn I'm going to create a variable should trigger pagination, and I'm going to use here remember. Make sure to import this remember, and in this we want to use here derived state of. So in this derived state of, we gonna write some logic which eventually help us to trigger my APIs. So we're gonna take information about the last visible items. So this last visible item is present in my lazy list state. So this has information about it. So lazy list state dot layout information, and in this we have visible item info, and we are interested in the last one, so last or null. So now we have information about the last visible item. Next we're gonna store the information about the total items. So this total item is again coming from our lazy list state, layout info, total item count. All right, so here we're gonna check few things. If our last visible item is not equals to null, and our last visible items dot index is less than or equals to my total items minus 3, trigger my API, or you can say Firebase Firestore. So to do that, I'm gonna use here launch effect. Simply pass my should trigger pagination. In this we're gonna check should trigger pagination dot value. If it is true, I'm gonna trigger the pagination. So to do that, I'm gonna transfer this particular event to my parent composable. So to do that, I'm gonna use here load next page lambda. Okay, so now it's time to use it. So scroll down, and in this launch effect, simply use it load next page, and we are done. Alright, so now it's time to use this shared note screen content within our shared note screen. So to do that, first we require our view model. So use here view model, hilt view model. We need to add dependency for this. So go back to your build.gradle.kts, use here implementation lips hilt compose navigation. Okay, syncing is done. Come back to your shared note screen and here import it. Mention the type. So type is shared note view model. Next, I'm gonna create here shared notes view model. Shared note collect this thing in a form of state attached with lifecycle. This initial value of this thing is empty list. Okay, so now I'm gonna use here shared note screen content, and in this we're gonna pass modifier fill max size. Next we need to pass the list. So list is shared notes, and lastly we have load next page. So use here load next page your view model, and our view model has a function naming get paginated notes. So simply trigger it, and we are pretty much done with our shared note screen. Now it's time to create navigation graph for this particular feature. So go to your application module. We have here navigation, and in this navigation I'm gonna create an object, and the object name is shared note nav graph. Now in this I'm gonna use my base navigation graph. Override method build. We need to create a few destination in here. So seal interface naming dest, and in this we have two things. First we have our root, next we have our screen which is shared notes, again dest. Make sure to use here serializable and also on top of this root too. Okay, so now in this build I'm gonna use my nav graph builder, and this nav graph builder has navigation in it. So mention the destination for your subgraph which is destination dot root. Mention the start destination which is destination dot our shared notes. I'm gonna use here composable. So corresponding to my shared node destination we have a composable which is shared nodes screen, and in this we need to pass modifier. Okay, so we are done with our shared nodes and navigation graph. Now it's time to register this thing. So go to your main activity, and here in the main activity we have a list of navigation graph, and in this I'm gonna simply attach my shared notes navigation graph, import it. So now it's time to create a navigation from our dashboard screen to this shared screen. So to do that, we need to navigate in our notes screen. So open your notes feature. Over here, go to the UI layer, open the notes screen, scroll down. We have here note screen content, we have here top application bar, and in this top bar we have actions, and in this action I'm gonna create an action button. Within this we're gonna use icon image vector icons default dot share, and its content description is null. Now I'm going to transfer this click event to my parent composable. So to do that, just use here navigate to shared notes. This is my lambda, I'm gonna use it. So simply pass in here, copy this stuff, scroll up, use the same thing in here, and at the end use navigate to shared notes in here too. Okay, control click on your note screen, you will eventually land up to your notes navigation graph, and over here you can use that thing, which is navigate to shared notes. Now you can use navigation controller, navigate, mention the destination. So my destination is shared notes navigation graph dot destination dot route. Alright, so we are done with the navigation thing, and now we're gonna execute our application. And is executing, and when I click to this share icon, okay, so this is my share node, and yep, none of them are visible in here. So we're gonna fix. So to do that, go to your shared node view model, and here you can see get paginated nodes. So for the first time when our view model initializes, I'm gonna trigger this get paginated nodes so that it start the pagination. And just after this first triggering, next pagination trigger will be happen from this load next page. And one more thing, here you can see in the last line of this particular derived state of, we are doing a very small mistake. Instead of checking this thing less than my total item minus 3, we need to check if it is greater than total items minus 3. And instead of using 3, it will make more sense to use here 1. It's totally up to you. If you want to use 3, go with it. But I think minus 1 will be the better choice for this particular paging scenario. Alright, so next we need to jump on in our data layer of this shared nodes repository, and here you can see we are actually starting our query after this document. So we need to update our query too, so that here we will trigger the updated query, not the same query. So to do that, just use here var so that we can update it. And here, if our document snapshot is not null, we'll simply update this query and then execute it. Alright, so these are the fixes that we need. Now simply re-execute our application. Alright, so app is executing. Now when I click to this share icon, here you can see we'll retrieve all of the information like fourth node, then we have first node, second node, third node, etc. Okay, and after this no data available because we have only 5 information, as you can see in here. Now let me create one more node just to check whether the query is working or not. So this is not shared, and here in the content I'm gonna call this not shared content. Okay, I'm gonna add here an image and save it. Alright, so now we have here 6 nodes and 5 of them are shared. Now I'm gonna click on this 1 2 3 4 5. We have only 5 nodes. That means our query works perfectly fine as we expected. Now we need to fix the UI. So to do that, just open your shared node screen over here, and now it's time to just revamp our UI. So first thing first, in this particular row, instead of using here size 80, I'm gonna use here 60, and also I'm gonna introduce here padding. So horizontally I'm gonna use 12 dp, So this is my text and I'm gonna use here color, which is white. Okay, so far so good. Now here we have a spacer, and also instead of using here title small, I'm gonna use here title medium. Okay, so we are pretty much fix this particular section. Now it's time to fix this image. As you can see, right now we are only using this particular amount of space. I want to use here content scale crop. So to use that, just scroll down. Here we have modifier, and in this particular modifier I'm gonna use padding. So horizontally I'm gonna use here 4 dp padding, and vertically we do not want any. Next we need to use here scale. So we have here content scale, use content scale dot crop. Okay, so it will fix this issue, and instead of using here 200 dp, we'll use here, let's say 250 dp. Corresponding to this, we need to also update our loading case and error case. Okay, next we need to just use here padding for this title and our description. So to do that, go to your title, use here modifier, fill max width, and before this fill max width I'm gonna use here padding. Horizontally I'm gonna use here 12 dp, and vertically I'm gonna use here 4 dp. Okay, next for this particular content I'm gonna introduce padding. So just copy this modifier and simply paste in here, and vertically this time I'm gonna use 8 dp. Alright, so now I'm gonna re-execute my app just to verify our UI changes. Okay, click on this share icon. Alright, so here you can see this is looking a little better. Okay, so this space is pretty big. We need to fix that, and also we need few spacing over here at the header. So to do that, again jump into our composable. We have here a row, and horizontally we take 12 dp. Now I'm gonna use here one more padding, and this time I'm gonna take from top padding of 12 dp, and from padding bottom I'm gonna use again 12 dp. Okay, let me just re-execute it. Okay, so let's reduce this particular padding. So to do that, just scroll down. At the bottom we have our both texts over here, and instead of using here vertical, we'll use here padding. From top I'm gonna use 8 dp padding, from bottom I'm gonna use here 12 dp. Okay, re-execute it. Alright, so yeah, this is looking good. Let's make this title bold. So to do that, we'll use here copy, and in this copy we have font weight. Just use here font weight dot bold. Okay, re-execute it. Alright, so by using this approach you can actually use pagination with Firebase Firestore. If you like this video, subscribe my channel, and also write your precious comment. If you have any queries, just ping me on the comments. We will sort it out together. Okay, so we will meet in our next video where we will discuss something new about Firebase. Till that, goodbye.